thank you so much, Shirin, for this opportunity. Very nice. So thank you. This is going to be quite informal. So what I will do, I will go through the presentation with you. So I'm going to talk about emotions, stress. So I show you a bit of the agenda and so on. And then I take you through my work itself, so into my thesis. And then at the end, we just do some questions and answers. So I hope if I, can help answer some questions, I will. So if I can't, I say I can't. So maybe bring something to the next session. Now we can work on something else. So, okay, so let's start now. I'm going to give you a little bit of my own background. My name is Joceley. So for who doesn't know me, I was born in Brazil, and I lived a big part of my life in Ireland. And in Brazil, I was working as a police detective before, and I was always very interested in how people do things the way they do, and why some like personalities and all influence decisions. And I was always very curious about people in general, and always loved this side of the human side. But really, at the time, I didn't pursue psychology, and I was studying some other field, and I was studying international commerce, and but always had this big interest. And it wasn't until later that I went to do another course, and I went into psychology, and I studied that in Ireland and in the UK. And so I have a master's in business and a master's in psychology as well. So I have a background in child psychology and psychotherapy. Here in Bahrain, I'm working with Sanshaha. I'm manager on duty, and I'm not practicing as a psychologist here. So, but this is really my passion. It's all my background as a psychology and therapist that I bring, and it's really a pleasure to be a part of here this group. So I'm going to take you through emotions. I'm going to talk a little bit about emotions, and I'm going to talk about stress and dual process, which is like a theory that is behind of my study. And I will take you through my study itself, and then at the end of a few recommendations, and we'll go to the questions and answers. All right. So I'll ask everybody if you just mute your phone or your microphone, so just so you don't get a background noise, so we can just focus on this. And then during the presentation, I need your help as well. I'll ask you something, and then I'll ask you to unmute your microphones, and you just give me some answers as well. All right. So here we go. So emotions now, I'm just going to see if I can minimize this. I hope you can see my whole screen. Are you able to see my screen there? Okay, just thumbs up there for me if you can all see it. Yeah, good. Okay, so emotions by the American Psychological Association, they define emotions as a complex reaction, and that is a pattern which is involving experiential, behavior, and psychological elements. So we're talking about three different kind of categories there when we're talking about emotions, because it's a complex thing, really. It's how we feel, how we experience something, which is different from person to person. So the way I see how I react towards, I don't know, jumping from a plane into a parachute might be different from somebody else. And so you have your behavior. So you'll be afraid of something, or how you react with that. And then you have your physiological way. So you have that butterfly into your stomach, and how you are actually anxious. Maybe your palms will be a bit sweaty, or your heart will be pumping, and so on. So for the purpose of this presentation, so I just have put a few pictures together, and just now you can actually unmute your microphones, because I need your help on 3 slides, okay? So you can all unmute, so we're gonna talk about. So I'm gonna ask you to name for me what you see. I'm gonna put pictures, And I just want you to say what you see, and it's all emotions, right? These are photographs, and I just want you to tell me how you feel, and then off you go, okay? So,
Okay.
okay, so here we go. What do you see on this picture now from me? Yeah.
Fear.
Sadness.
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 Yeah.
The one on
Desperation.
the one on the far left, she is way into depression. The one in the middle has just heard really bad news, and the child didn't get what he wanted.
Yeah. That's good. Very good. Okay, next.
To me, the lady on this is ecstasy,
Happiness.
Happiness. People are
relief,
Happiness.
happiness,
Happiness. Yeah.
elation,
relief.
winning something. Yeah.
Ecstasy.
The
Joy.
Very good. Okay, so I move on. Next picture, okay?
Okay.
worried, anxious,
Anxious.
scared. The first one is
Uncertain,
fear.
uncertain, shock,
Fear.
Yeah.
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 Uncertainty,
and
worrying,
shock. Yeah.
shock,
And shock.
helplessness.
What do I do?
Yeah, okay. So, and the next one now, just as quick as you did that, you please give me the answer.
Oh Lord.
Oh my God, what is that? No
Can I use
chance.
my pen?
Can
I use my pen?
It's more than 57,800 for sure.
800,
That's about all I can
yeah,
go.
but
Yeah.
Okay.
For
I have
that,
no
yes,
idea.
80,000 something.
It's more than 57,800 for sure.
More than.
9,086, but we really don't need this answer. It's just to say how difficult it is, right? How quick your brain reacts to certain things, which it's a picture and emotions, and how you have to go through a step of processes to give an answer to something like a maths question or something that you need to elaborate a little bit more, right? So it's just how your brain really works. And then sometimes what we see in the picture, it plays 1,000 things, and then we can quickly jump into a conclusion. We say it's sad, it's happy, it's it's or it's fear, anxiety, depression. So we can name those emotions. But when then we to do that maths equation, it's not that we can't do. We all can do it. And then I'm sure if some of you can do super quick, that's very good for you. I can certainly. So you have to go through a number of processes until you get to that to that answer, right? So we have like steps to calculate that. So basically, in your brain, you all hear is that you have the right and the left side of the brain. Some people are more into creative things, intuition, arts, is more creative. And the other side, and you have people who are more analytical, logical, and needs facts. So, but how is it like? So we're talking about different people there. How is it when somebody have stress? Even somebody who is analytical or somebody who is more full of creation and all. So how is stress really comes to play? How do we as human develop this stress in our lives? So I'm going to take you through a couple of things, like so this what really is and how we divide the stress, right? So just I like this Lovalo's indication of stress, because describe the stress is a mental tension caused by a stressor which developed into a compensatory response manifesting in psychological and physiological ways. So, which is exactly the same like the emotion. So you have different ways to feel that, to express that emotion. So you're expressing that, your behavior is different for in one way if you are stressed then you are unstressed. And there are a couple of different ways that we can describe stress, and we can just we can categorize as well. So first, we're going to separate now stress from positive and negative stress, right? I think this week during the group we even had a little bit of chat about procrastinating and stress and so on. And when I'm talking about, for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to refer to stress on the negative side. Okay, so stress, the positive stress, we also call them as like eustress. It's when somebody sees something like as a challenge, as a fun challenge. For example, now say if you're getting ready to get married, or there's something like there is a stress in that, but yet it's a good stress. Well, I hope for a lot of people. So or when you're having I don't know, when you're watching a scary movie or something like that, there is a little bit of stress, but it still is a positive stress, if you understand. Okay. So on the negative stress or distress, there is like the psychological stress that we're talking about, like the self-criticism, the panic attack, anxiety, the attachment, and then things like that. Or the psychological stress, which could be isolation, a loss of a loved one, and that means it could be a person, or it could be a pet, or it could be, so a loss for that person. It can be a stressful situation as well. And the physiological stress, the physical stress, sorry, and we could talk about pain when somebody is in big stress over a pain, over a hormonal imbalance, over maybe substance abuse or something like that. And those ways that the stress can be divided, we say acute, when something just happened, like an immediate response, like say you have an anxiety, you have a stomach pain, and that is as a response of something that, for example, if you are about to do a test and you have that kind of sharp, um, you know, anxiety and so on, that's an acute stress. But that is soon gone once you finish that test and you're relieved. So that was actually an acute stress. An episodic stress is like something frequent. For example, somebody who is late for work and is late every day for work. Say that person is constantly rushing and every day a little bit late, and there's that little bit of anxiety happening every day going to work or something. But it's like in episodes as such. And then you have a chronic stress, which is something a bit more prolonged. It's like something more permanent in your life, or it could be like from a job, a stressful job. Like I said to you, I've been in the police before. So at the time when I was involved, in certain case, okay, that at the beginning was just like an acute stress. But then when you don't have a time to recover from that stress, and you have another stress and another stress, so sometimes it can become like a chronic stress. So, and it can be something that it's actually more severe, so than your normal day-to-day stress. Because in fact, stress is something that's present in everybody's life. There is no running away from it, really, because it could be somebody driving a car and you're driving your car and somebody just being very rude to you at the traffic, or it could be somebody in your family could be sick, or you need to take care of somebody. So there's so many different things and many different forms of stress there. So I'm going to take you really first for what this stress does into your brain. So you have like three parts of the brain that I'd be very interested now, and this is something super, super interesting. There you were showing like the prefrontal cortex, which regulates your thoughts, emotion, behavior, your amygdala, reacts to stress and emotional arouses, and the hippocampus stores learning and memory. So your medulla is like a small structure in your brain, the shape of an almond, and it's like the alarm bell in your brain. It signals it signals a threat. It senses a threat, and then it sends that signal like it was an alarm into your body. So the first thing that it does, it reacts like we call this our old brain. So it's very linked to the emotional side of things, right? And then the thing is that the amygdala, it reacts like an automatic program to your brain, which is your fight or flight or your freeze. You probably are familiar with that. You probably heard of it. But the amygdala, so there are the three parts of the brain that I want to talk to you about. And then there is another one that I'm going to show in the next slide, right? So your prefrontal cortex, we're going to say, if I'm going to give it a name, as another author of a book that's very interesting book that I read before, I can send on to you after. It's called your CEO of your brain, which is kind of it sends all the operations of your brain there, and it's just like communicating with the amygdala back and forward and all. And then you have your hippocampus there, where you have all your memories, where you have your experiences stored, and then your amygdala communicates with your hippocampus as well, back and forward, right? I just ask you to mute your microphone if you just haven't mute, just maybe just a little bit of a noise in the background. So the hippocampus, right? The hippocampus we're going to call like your brain biographer, right? Which is retrieving the information that you have from your previous experience, the things that you have learned in the past, and all the responses that you have had in the past, say when you encountered a danger or an experience, basically your amygdala, when it senses something, it communicates, and then it sends like a signal throughout your body, but it's going to remember what has happened in the past and how you're going to react now. So, and that's why it's just so quickly for the amygdala, it responds to emotional things. So the way that you will respond, how quick those pictures, you could see the emotions in those faces, it's something that happened very quickly in your brain. So you don't have to think about it. It's there. The way you just could see somebody smiling or somebody very worried or a child crying. That happens to you instantly. But for you to do the equation, the maths equation, so it's not so simple. So you're going to have to activate your memory. You're going to have to think. You're going to have to bring it back, a couple of things back and forward there, right? So, so the thing is that with your amygdala there, when it senses a stress, right, some stressor, it sends a signal to your hypothalamus. So your hypothalamus sends, all hormones and all to your pituitary. Let me get this name right now. Pituitary gland. Oh my God, this is like I get on that all the time. But then it sends your response like in a form of hormones and all. So straight to your signal, which as a signal to your adrenal gland. So your adrenal gland sits on top of your kidney, and that will release cortisol into your bloodstream. So, and that cortisol, it get into a cycle again. So it goes back into your, like a cycle as such, into your brain again. So what that does is that when you are in a chronic stage of stress, that cycle repeats itself very fast. If you don't have a time to slow down between one stressor and the other, so that big spike of cortisol continues to happen too often into your body. And that it puts you into a sense of alert all the time. So like you and your cortisol is going to weaken your immune system. It's going to affect you in many other ways. So there was actually a study done before with the immune system, cortisol, where they put people, they isolated people in a hotel so that people wouldn't have outside influence, right? So they had a group of people who were very stressed and a group of people who were less stressed. And they exposed everybody through like a type of cold and flu. I suppose you wouldn't want to be doing that these days with coronavirus, right? That's an old, that's an old study, right? But and then the interesting thing is that people who were more prone to stress, they were the people who were more vulnerable and they are actually more prone to catch the cold. So, and there it goes to show, like, so more stressed you are, you put a strain in your immune system as well, right? So, and that is also goes for chronic inflammation and things like that. And if you, like, there are studies there today, you all know that inflammation is linked to conditions like cancer, asthma, and it's a series of other problems there. And so in this next slide there, you see that is the long effect of the chronic stress in your body and in your mind. On the right side, you see the prefrontal cortex there, like the picture of the two brains, and you see how a brain, unstressed brain, you have the connection from your prefrontal cortex flowing into all the other parts of your brain. And then on the other side, you have the red. I hope you can see that. Give me a thumbs up, and if you cannot see it. Yeah, can you see the red brain there? Good. So, and that is showing how your amygdala is actually calling the shots and sending the signals. And I don't know if you heard about something called the amygdala hijack before. It's when somebody is very stressed, and then your amygdala communicates with your other functions so quickly in your brain. It's communicating with your hippocampus, with your brain biographer, and it's bringing back the memories that you had in the past. And if there were bad memories, if it, say, like, for example, somebody who was during childhood had trauma, and maybe if that person is dealing with a difficult boss or somebody at work, that might trigger those memories without the person knowing that that is triggered. Basically, you activating your memories, and your amygdala sometimes is just working so quickly that, because the old brain, which was like your amygdala, the reptile brain, it works a lot faster than your prefrontal cortex, which is your logical brain. So then what is happening there? You are very quickly to answer something, or maybe to behave in a certain way that if you thought in a calm state, you wouldn't. I suppose many of us, including myself, we all have been in this situation that you have put yourself in a very stressed moment, or for whatever reason, you will react in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. Like if you have thought about it, you wouldn't really. So and that goes for all of us, really. So so basically, with the chronic stress, you have your cortisol. What it does, it strengthens the connections that you have between your amygdala and your hippocampus. And when that does so, you are a lot more predisposed to have this kind of reaction. And that's a very, very, it's a fascinating thing. I find it fascinating. And then on the left side here, you see when somebody is stressed and what it really does to your body. So with all the different hormones they're sent to your bloodstream, and adrenaline and cortisol and other hormones as well. And then you have your fast breathing, that you have, your pancreas is increasing on glucose production, because you need that glucose for your brain. So that's sent to your brain because you need to think fast. So in the fight and flight or freeze response, you have to act quickly. So your brain needs glucose. So that's why it sends a big shot of glucose to your brain. And then so you could maybe run from a situation. And that's the interesting thing, because in the past, like this is all due to our ancestors, how our ancestors viewed how they had to run away from lions and tigers and so on. So they needed all that cortisol. They needed that response to run from lions and to deal with the danger and maybe to survive and to find food and etc. But the thing is that we have exactly the same mechanism now in us. But the thing is that we are dealing with different stresses. So our stresses are dealing with your child, in school, or dealing with somebody at work, or talking to your boss, or simple things. But the mechanism that you have to respond is exactly the same one. So if you are not aware of this, how you have to train your thoughts, and so you could be reacting very quickly, and you are reacting in a way that if you had got more information, more facts, perhaps you wouldn't. So in that now, so that's something very interesting. And a couple of scientists and neuroscientists now, and this is back in the 70s. They came up with this dual process theory, and sometimes they call it system 1 and system 2. It's the way we think, is we're thinking fast on the system 1, which is we call type 1 as well. So some scientists we call type 1, some other call system 1 or system 2 or type 2. And or other names. Sometimes they even different literature would have different names for that. But here we're looking, how one side of your brain is the super fast thinking now, with all your amygdala response. So you're impulsive, you have like you go through habits, and it's a very lazy system that is, I suppose, in a way that the information is already there, so it's not really triggering anything else but what is already there. It's not taking into account any new facts, any new figures or statistics or anything to make a decision. It just makes a decision because simply is the way you have done in the past, maybe worked for you, and you recognize that, and then you do, and it's an emotional response. And then you have on the other side the type 2, which is the slow, more effortful and more logical. So you have something that is more reflective, and then it's something that you're working on problem solving, planning. It's all the more logical side of things, that in your brain, the two structures there, we're talking really about your prefrontal cortex when you're talking about the type 2, and the type 1 would be more your middle kind of response. Really, those systems, like the way that we talk, type 1 and type 2, is more a way, they don't exist as such. It's not like a type 1 or type 2 system that is this. There is no such a mechanism as such in your system, but in your brain. But it's all it's easy for you to understand how your brain works, right? And as well as that, yes, your middle response, like the type 1, but it's also communicated with your prefrontal cortex, which is the front of your brain. And then we call those connections, back and forward. So then it's easier to understand if we call them type 1 and type 2 like that. Okay. And I can, at the end, I can share with you as well a very good book now that was written a couple of years ago from Daniel Kahneman. It's called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. I don't know if you heard of it before. It's a very, very good book as well. So I highly recommend for that. And that's why, you know, when I asked you a question, how you could, you know, if you could do the equation that fast, really you can't, because you have to use there's a cascade of processes that you need to do as well. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of how the type 1 works, because it's covered in beliefs and biases that people have, and that's the way it is. We are humans and we all have some form of beliefs and biases, and we need to be very conscious that those things are there, because you need to, in order to make a decision, to be able to go beyond those biases and then and make an informed decision. So for example, now this is a very interesting thing now. That's just an example now. So the international travelers were asked, how much would you pay for insurance that pays $100,000 in case of death for any reason? And others were asked, how much would you pay for insurance that pays $100,000 in case of death for in terror incident? Well, the interesting thing is that the second group of people were willing to pay a higher price than the first one. And if you really think, they're more afraid of dying for a terrorist incident than dying. So in any way, they were dying anyway. So if, you know, there is no logic there if you think, but it's incredible how marketing plays with emotions. So when you look at all advertisements there are there, how things are written, how they are asked, and it changes the way, even the order of questions, it changes the whole dynamic, the whole way you perceive something. There was actually, I'm trying to remember here now, there's a very interesting study as well, that they were asked somebody how many dates they have in the past. These were like for students or, you know, a college or whatever. And then they asked after, how happy are you? And then they did the same thing the other way around, asking people, how happy are you? And then how many dates did you have? Okay, this is more, I suppose, is a Western kind of study. So, and then the interesting thing is that people were linking the number of dates that they had with happiness, which is something completely different. We all know one thing is nothing to do with the other, but it depends on the sequence that you asked, but your brain would actually, you know, get one information and substitute with something else. So you can unmute your microphones again. So, and then we can just have a little chat about this as well. So please. So I'm going to ask you what you see on this, right? What do you see?
B.
13.
No, B.
13.
Or B.
Oh, I see a
or
number.
capital B.
13 or B. And it really, it depends. It could be both. It's a, isn't it? It depends. It's how, you know, so when we have an information, we have, it depends. It could be 13, it could be B, yeah, both right. But we gotta be very careful when we are dealing with information, with people, with everything, because sometimes we could be judging something through our eyes and through our experience. And then instead of seeing how the other person sees it, which is very interesting. And we're, as a human, so that's a problem with all of us, that we see things through our eyes, through our experience, and not necessarily how the other person is seeing it. And that person had their own experiences. And the thing is that, or the problem is that many people grow old, but you see old children, they are not mature. And that is when you see that people are there fighting with their reasons, with their own biases, with their own beliefs, and that they are not open to hear what the other side has to say. So, and it's a human thing, and then we have to be very conscious and very careful of this, because I think we are living in a very global world, and then our children and all that, they are coming to a different world now, and we want them to experience and see other people's perspective and the other context and other things as well. So we have to be very careful and mindful of so many things, and to understand what you see and what I see. Even though we're seeing the same thing, we could be seeing something totally different, right? Okay, so, and then it's like in this picture, you know, we call the perceptual illusion of attribute substitution. The funny thing there is, like, the three pictures, the three shadows, they're exactly the same size, but the illusion that you have is that one is bigger than the other, one is higher, one is taller than the other. But in fact, if you measure, they're exactly the same. So, and that's our, is, you know, it's just a couple of little examples of our type 1, that we are sometimes quickly to say it is this or it is that. But in fact, it may not be at all, right? So, so it's just, I will, so I'm going to take you through now my study itself now. So, and then you can, you know, feel free to ask a couple of questions there as you go, okay? So this study was called, like, the impact of stress on cognitive emotion regulation aspects of decision making. So this study was approved by the University of Derby in the UK, and it was all done under the ethical norms of the British Psychological Society. And then for this study to be something statistical, you know, that had a weight or representative. So the minimal number of people that needed to participate was 98, according to the G power, which is like a statistical way to calculate how many people you need for a certain type of study. So in fact, I end up having 220 people in this study, which was great, but the 113 people came out of this study, as they were, like, some of them didn't want to have the information shared, even though this was totally anonymous, but some people don't want to be part of any statistical kind of thing. So then the age group there, the sample that I had was like adults between 18 to 55, and that is according to some studies that the age of cognitive decline happens like after 55 in a quicker way. But that, of course, it goes on from person to person. It depends of a huge amount of things, including intelligence, social ways, or to begin with. So that there's many influential factors into that. But usually 18 to 55, so that somebody answering on one scale and the other, they will be as fast or as slow to answer the same question. Then I have all native speaking population, or somebody who was like fluent in English, to do this study. And because a similar study was done in German before, and I wanted to have something in English done, and then it's just like another variation of this study as well. And it was always all the people who, nobody had any mental disorder, so anybody with any mental history with the mental disorder was excluded from the study. And we had 57 females, so 50 males at the end of this study. So we had 107 until the very end of this study that wanted to share the information for this, right? So in this study, I wanted to know what would they stress if I induce stress, if I have a group of people and I divide them into two groups, really, because it's an experimental study. How can I stress if I use unsolvable anagrams to stress a population, to stress a group? Would this make an impact of them deciding what cards they would play in a game called the Iowa gambling task? So basically, I'm going to take you through, I'm going to explain this Iowa gambling task, how it is. And it was something developed by other scientists in the 90s. They were neuroscientists that they wanted to, they were very interested in people with a prefrontal damage cortex, the prefrontal cortex when it was injured. Those people, they were actually, even though they had like intelligence of like, you know, average, like, you know, a normal person, they were unable to make decisions on a daily basis, like simple things like what am I going to wear today, or where am I going to go? Am I going to go out to this place or that place? Or they started to have a huge, like a financial loss, because they couldn't really learn from their past mistakes. They couldn't learn from their own experiences. And what was the link? You know, so they created a game with cards to see how those patients would react. And I'm going to take you through that in a minute. Then I gave the participants 2 questionnaires to answer as well. One was in perceived stress, just to know how people actually, how do they perceive stress? And then another about emotion regulation, how they actually regulate the emotions, if they're able to express the emotions or if they actually suppress what they feel. And does it make any difference? And then I was interested to see as well if I have a timer. So I gave everybody at the same time 45 seconds, but I wanted to see if somebody stressed would react worse under time pressure than somebody who is not stressed. Okay, so then it had these 2 groups of people. So they stressed and non-stressed. And then this, of course, then I wanted to see in perceived stress. So I divided them into somebody high or low, somebody who would have a good perception of stress. For example, I would ask you, this is all questionnaires already written. I didn't write those questionnaires myself. So this is all something that had been proven before, had been used before, validated, and so on and so forth. And then I would have asked in the last 4 weeks, how would you, have you found anything difficult? Say, have you thought that you couldn't resolve a problem, and have you thought that you didn't have the ability to solve a problem, and so on and so forth. So then on the emotion regulation, I would have asked how somebody would be reacting to an emotion, and I given a Likert scale from 1 to 7, and that person would be reacting in a way to suppress the emotion or in a way to express the emotion. And then the time pressure, high and low, and 45 seconds of basically how quick somebody would be doing those tasks. And then they run all sorts of statistical tests. So this is only interested if you're, you know, I just put it there because maybe some of you would be interested in that kind of thing. Not that I want to be talking about boring stuff now, right? And I just jump into that now. So it's just so you know that there was a very much heavily statistical background behind this, and very much all scientific as well, okay? So when I measured the perceived stress, so that was actually looking how much somebody could control a situation and how much the person can predict that something is happening. So it's all to do with the predictability and the controllability of a situation, okay? And then on the emotion regulation, which is emotion regulation is like, it's a series of cognitive process that affect an individual's style of emotional responses, how emotions are perceived and how they're expressed. So these Gross and Thompson have done a lot of work into this, and Gross is is a very very known into this emotion regulation part of psychology. It's super interesting. So he has written there's a lot of videos and all about this. And in fact, there's a lot of different emotion regulation strategies that people use. But for this particular study, I was interested in these two main types, because these are the two main types of suppression or cognitive reappraisal. And the cognitive reappraisal is to do really if somebody can think through an emotional circumstance and then they can react in a logical way. Which if you look again by, I'm all linking this to the brain again, right? Every step here, if you look, think about the brain again. So we're talking about the prefrontal cortex, we're talking about the amygdala. I'm joining all those informations together into this, right? So this is all to get all the emotional side and the rational side of things together, right? So, and then on the time pressure, I already explained that was like 45 seconds per word that I gave to solvable and unsolvable anagrams. So if you can imagine, right, somebody is sitting in front of a computer trying to do this test, right? And then I give you an example here. And everybody could speak English very clearly, you know, and they are giving the list of unsolvable anagrams. There are 20 words, here's only 5. And they're given 45 seconds and they're there like, lemon, no, doesn't work. So it becomes, you know, almost like a frustration. It generates a kind of a feeling that the person doesn't have control. So when I was looking for the predictability and the controllability, somebody who thinks they speak, you know, I speak the language, I am native speaker, this is my language, or I speak English, I can understand this. How come I can't do this word? What's wrong with me? So all those thoughts, right, behind it. And then on the other side, who is given the other group who I didn't want to stress, right? So think about, just got easy words. Those words were tested before, and they could simply go through it very easily and form the new words. So can you actually see those words there, like police, wanted, and all this? So yeah. So it would be, if you're given 45 seconds to do it, I'm sure you all will be able to do that, right? Then, so then after they did the anagrams, they're asked to play this game. It's called the Iowa gambling task. So the Iowa gambling task, right? The scientists behind it, so they came up with the theory that the person would develop a sense that how to play this game before they could even explain how the game works. So you were giving 4 decks of cards. That's a computerized version of it, right? And then you asked to click. You have 100 cards to click. You have 100 choices to make. And you were giving like a fictitious money there at the beginning. You were kind of giving $2,000 at the beginning, and you have to make as much profit as possible. So think about this now. Okay, it's a fictitious money, but you play, you gotta make money. You're already stressed if you're in the stressed group, and then you gotta make money here, and then you have those decks of cards, and you just start to click on them, and then you click and you have a response. Okay, you won $50, but you lost 250. So your previous total was $2,000. Now you have 1,800. So, and then it goes on and on and on. So the person keeps clicking that 100 times. But the interesting thing behind it, right? There's a logic all behind this thing, right? That there are 4 decks of cards, and there is a trigger on this. 2 of them give you more money than the other 2. Even though sometimes you win a lot of money, say for example, in this one, you won 50 and you lost 250. Maybe it could be the other way around. Okay, so 2 decks of cards, it gives you a huge amount of winning, but then after it gives you a massive losing as well. So, but you have a sequence of things that is operating in the background, right? But 2 decks are better than the other 2. And the thing is that I wanted to know if somebody who's gone through the stress previously, are they being able to determine which are the 2 better decks to click? Will they make more money at the end of the game or not? Will they remember that which decks gave them more money? Will they restore that information? Will they be able to learn how the game works? Will they pay enough attention? Will they have attention after stress? And the owner of this theory says that the somatic marker is like almost like a gut feeling that the person will develop that, okay, this deck of cards giving me more wins than this deck of cards. But my thesis and my theory was that I don't think so. I think there has to be some form of logical thinking behind it. My way of thinking is that if somebody is able to perceive that there is a connection right at the beginning, if they have been unstressed and they can do that, so they can therefore show that there is a logical way, and it's not just the gut feeling, it's not just emotional, it's logical too. So which means you have the prefrontal cortex talking, communicating back and forward to your memory, because you got to remember what the cards are and everything. So then what happened? These are the results, right? So on the top, on the red line here, this is a graphic of errors. Who made more errors, basically? So the people with the stress are the red lines, and the people in the control group were the ones with less mistakes in the bottom. So this is numbers of mistakes. And the way I have there from 1 to 5, right? What I did, I broke down this task because the person had 100 times to do this. And I wanted to see if the person learned throughout the game. So basically, the psychology behind it is that I want to know how quick you learn. I want to know if you paid attention at the beginning, how fast you learned, and if you were able to detect all the differences or not. So, and then here you look again now, which I found fascinating, I found incredible, that if you look at the control group, at the end of the net score, who made more money or who lost more money throughout the game. So it's incredible to see the difference between the people who actually under the stress and the people who actually in the control group, the non-stressed people, which I thought was just incredible to think that it would make such a difference. And it was only a game that we played beforehand, but I also was interested to see which group was able to determine, like, which group was it more stressed people were able to do better, or was the people was actually the group that had more control under the emotions, or how did they do under time and so on. So it turned out that the people who were more stressed, they really, they did far worse, and they had poor attention, poor perception, poor learning, poor concentration, memory. They made worse decisions, they made more mistakes, and it's a series of things. And they were also slower to do the game, to play the game. So it's scary to see how stress can actually affect you so much. But this is very fine, right? This is very, very fine, because we think it doesn't affect us, but it does. It really does. And then it's like what stress does to us is just it's something like how it's incredible, and it's over time. That's why we're saying like the chronic stress, how it can impact, you know, your body, and how it can go through you know, so much parts of your, and it can take your life into a different direction, really. If you're, you know, if you're playing, if you're thinking about how people with the brain injury in this prefrontal cortex, how they're unable to learn from their mistakes, and how are they are able to, they're not able to rationalize things. So really, like, for a conclusion of this study was that it contributed to the literature that is already there supporting the Iowa gambling task. It's actually better understood by the dual process than just the gut feeling. Because I think, you know, that this is, you know, my proposal is that we actually are using the connections right from the beginning. Because if I go back here and I see from the beginning, from the right at the beginning on the task, you see the difference on the group, see the different blocks there, because I divided the 100 tasks into 5 blocks. Every 20 blocks, I checked them separately. All the details, I checked them separately, and throughout the task. So they started to learn from the beginning. The people who were not stressed, it made a difference. So the logical side was there immediately, not just like a gut feeling. So, and I, like, my proposal for the university was that they take this and they repeat this study using neuroimaging imaging, because it would be very interesting to see through a neuroimage, because you'll see how the person is using the prefrontal cortex and how they are reacting under stress, and how their amygdala it's actually not, you know, it's more hijacked into your emotional side of things. So and then basically the results of like time pressure is TP I have there for time pressure, perceived stress and emotion regulation, and how they all contributed to the poor performance, and how they all influenced in decisions that we make. And this, it goes throughout, you know, things like in our lives, really, on our kind of day to day. So you can all unmute your microphones. I just wanted to talk to you all about, you know, a few recommendations that like I just really put, you know, when we're like under such a stress on the daily basis, because we all have our stressors in life, and nobody will go through life without them anyway. It's impossible, it's present. But that we can take times for ourselves, and then we try to see what really works, what you find your, you know, you find your way to calm yourself. That is actually through there is a huge amount of work and research in meditation. So I'm finding it very interesting. And then, of course, there is another side of the psychologists who are actually very biased on it as well. So some people think that who is studying this group is only people who are meditating. But then you have the neuroimage studies showing the differences as well. So which I love now in psychology as a science, is that we have neuroimaging, that we can actually see studies there, and they are in place. What is actually making difference in our brain and our day-to-day. We can see that. And you can see that some of them through blood tests, how much cortisol is there, the levels of hormones, and that's all there, you know. So what really makes a difference for us, okay, so it's exercising, eating healthy, you know, in your social connections, even being connected, you know, and that humor, it's proved that what makes a difference really to us, and even to people who live longer, and a lot of that is actually the connections that we have, is the social connectivity that we have with each other. And then it's super important, and it's really interesting as well how people who are more prone to depression and then anxieties and all, a lot of them are people who are actually more isolated. So people who are actually, so you gotta be, just we have to remember as well, we have difference in personalities. So we all bring our own personalities into play, and that makes a huge difference too. But the interesting thing here is that there's the science is there, and the numbers are there, like from big huge studies there are there today, that these are the things that are making a difference for us to have a balance in our lives, to try to get a well-being restored into our systems, to to eat healthy with sleep. So when you actually chronically at your, like when your levels of cortisol is really high, that interferes with your sleep, because the cortisol is keeping your brain awake. In the past, you had to be awake for your battles, for your, your stress, to get your food, and to your, our ancestor needed that, to run away from the lions and so on, and that kept them in the high alert. So perhaps, that extensive cortisol in our bodies and everything might be one of the reasons that might be keeping us awake, and at night. And even other things like, how exercise is a great way to release good chemicals into your body, and to balance that imbalance as well from, the adrenaline and the cortisol sometimes. So so bear in mind as well that when we're talking about stress, that you have your positive stress that, we say that these are the fun things, or the things that brings you some sort of excitement of a challenge. That the way we view stress is super important, that we have to transform the way we see things as a threat. We have to understand this and maybe turn this into a challenge for us, because you gotta, I don't know, if you have to work super hard, maybe you might start to think, okay, maybe I could get a promotion, or maybe this will lead me to a person's satisfaction. Or you gotta try to view the stress differently, because how we view stress, the perception to stress is also a huge difference, makes a huge difference as well. There was a study, I think, by the University of California, where they put mothers who were mothers of children with autism, and we, as parents, if you are a parent, you will know that parenting is a challenge, right? And then parenting a child with autism or any other sort of condition, it's quite difficult, and it's very stressful. So they got a group of mothers who were had in common that they all had children with autism, and they wanted to study stress in that group. And what they found out was very interesting, that one group was had a chemical, and that they had something in their DNA, which is thalamus, which was all like a genetic, it's like if you think about your shoelace, right? And you think about the little cap of your shoelace, that little plastic, right? That would be the protection of it as such. So that, and then that in time would be used, or in time like with ears, and that is like a gene side of us that would be aging us, right? Then they found out that in those mothers.
Is that the telometer?
Yes, yeah. And in those mothers, that some of them had a shorter than in the others. And they say, well, what's the difference here? The difference was really how they perceived the stress. that some of them were able to regulate themselves through whatever way they could possibly do to find a balance and how to view stress, and that they cared for their child that had autism, but they viewed that differently than the other people who actually viewed that as a big burden in their lives. So we got to be very conscious of how we view things in life, because that certainly affects us, and that is a huge effect. And the difference was in about 8 to 10 years. They are aging around 8 to 10 years faster than the other people. So I think it's fascinating. It's just, and these are real studies. These are things that are there. So so with that, I just concluded the whole thing, and I'm gonna leave it open for a little questions and answers now. And then I hope I brought us something here that
Yes.
learn, and that I hope you found it interesting as well. So
Thank you. It was interesting.
it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you.
yeah.
I have a question regarding steroids. Now, steroids is cortisol, am I right?
That's right. Yeah.
And would a person be given steroids when the cortisol levels are depleted in the body, when the pancreas cannot produce a sufficient amount? Is that why the artificial injection of cortisol is given? Is it the depletion of?
I think this is more probably a medical question than a psychological question, right? So my thoughts would be like, if somebody is given cortisol, if your levels of cortisol are low, there is also something called, do you know when somebody is like in like a freeze condition as such? When your levels of cortisol are too low, you are actually unable to react as well to a situation. So, and that goes through a lot of other things, because it controls other things into your body as well. So I presume that that would be much more a medical question than a psychological question. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to answer that, but I'm very sure that there is also problems with a lot of people with with lower cortisol levels as well, and that is an issue too.
I was listening to Gabo Mate, and he was referring to cortisol being used for asthma. And that's when he talked about it, is that he says that when the body depletes the cortisol, he said, do you know what the two inhalers that you use are? And then he talked of cortisol. It was only then that I knew that, one was a stress hormone that is given for asthma.
Yes, and that's correct. Yeah, and you see, but people with the high levels of stress, they're more prone to asthma. It's an interesting thing, because the body, so when our body produces the cortisol, and automatically it tells the brain as well to stop producing. Like, so when the person perceives a threat, so it sends the chemicals signals to produce the cortisol. But once the threat is gone, once that is resolved, it also sends the same cortisol sends the signals to your brain to stop producing it and to shut it down, so things can go back to normal. But when you don't have that stop and go, and then becomes a problem. So the system is producing. It's like if you are a car driving a car without brakes, that when you need it to stop, it doesn't, or you're just going through. If you were producing the right amount, you're cruising in a highway, stopping when you need, going forward when you need. But when you are in a constant high alert and in a chronic stress, you're actually unable to stop when you need. And then you actually have those, you see that sometimes people explode, or that they react in a way that if they had thought, they would never do it. And this happens to all of us. It has happened, I'm sure it has happened to all of you in the past. So.
With this, I'm just intrigued. Why doesn't medicine take it on board? I mean, why isn't this aspect of health or well-being addressed by the medical profession without, there is this level of acknowledgement is not there for some strange reason in the medical industry or the medical profession. Why is that?
I think a lot of it now, right? These are all based in very new research. Everything now is based on past studies and new studies. So now the new studies I refer to things that we have been using with neuroimaging as well to show that yes, we have been talking about this, and now psychology can finally prove certain things through neuroimaging as well, because there's a lot of stigma, and a lot of that, unfortunately, people are not really going through the steps that they should, and a lot of times because there is a stigma to into mental health. So a lot of people don't go to look for help because they might think that, okay, why would you go to a psychologist? Are you crazy? So, and that's a huge problem, and it varies, of course, from culture to culture. But the thing is that a lot of these studies in the past now, I think we have a fantastic enlightenment now, bringing them with the neuroimaging. I think we're bringing psychology into a new level now, which I think it's fantastic for all of us, and I think is the way forward, really.
So I just want to ask you that, I found it interesting what you said that in a stress situation, that, if we are taught to think logically, then the stress kind of elevates. And that's so true because, stress is, most part of it is imaginary. We imagine a situation and we think what will happen, and then we think and overthink, and we have already created a situation before its occurrence that this is what is going to happen, and then the stress builds. And is it possible at that point in time, is there some training for us to recognize that and start thinking logically? Because I have experienced this, that I stress so much over a situation of what somebody might say. And in the end, I go prepared, all prepared to challenge that and everything. That person hasn't even thought like that, My hours have been wasted in like Don Quixote fighting the windmill, sort of,
It's very interesting what you said, and it's super important now, right? Because you
Yes.
oxygen something now that it happens through all of us, and the reason why we react the way we do, and like many times, is because it's the way we've been taught. Is we are like a product of our childhood, and then now that we are adults, we bring back like our experiences, and then some, of course, that now as an adult you're mature and you can process things, but unfortunately the way that or the environment, or fortunately, not always unfortunately, or fortunately, the way that you've been taught in the past, it comes to light, and that it can help, or it can sometimes not be helpful at all. And that's why some people can sometimes experience this stress, like exactly what you described now. But maybe that pressure it could have been coming for something that in the past you have been put under pressure, that this got to be right, so you got to perform this way, or some even parents that are perfectionists as well, that it's difficult growing up with that, because or high expectation and all that, because it puts the pressure on the child. And then years later, all those things, when the child is able to process that as an adult, that will be not that you're going to be 100% what you were there in the past, or you will learn as you go along, of course, and people change, but you're always gonna revert for your instinct is revert to that initial, that's an instinct. That's like
Right.
that you're reverting to that. But the thing is that if we can help to, like, if we can learn to identify where you started to feel that way, then you kind of should stop yourself and pause there and say, okay, no, let me just breathe in here and think about this and make a decision, a rational one, thinking an overall rather than just an emotional thing, right? And then
Yeah.
I'm not worried about so much of, well, what other people might think or other people might say, or because we always worried about being embarrassed or something like that, you know, how people react. So we all go through similar feelings like that. But the thing is that at which cost, you know? So you have to find a balance and start to identify within yourself what works for you. You have to take that little bit of pause and step back and just to kind of work through the issues or the traumas or the things that you have yourself, or every one of us have, all of us would have something that, you know, we would like to work on. So it's
Yes,
inevitable, but they do play a picture. Sorry, I took too long to.
Jocelyn, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's not
Can
long.
I ask you one question, Jocelyn? Can you just explain what exactly is cognizant reappraisal?
The reappraisal, right? So let me just.
See, cognizant reappraisal, because cognizant is understanding and reappraisal, or, you know, like how do you put it together? Cognizant emotion and cognizant reappraisal. Both of them, if you could explain, if you could make it with examples, it's easier to understand.
Good, good. Okay. So the cognitive reappraisal, right? It's when somebody can justify in their head um, the way they react over something. For example, somebody was talking to me and said something to me rudely and in a way that I was upset, but I was in front of a group. I couldn't answer, like, you know,
The way you
the way maybe I should. And then the cognitive reappraisal would be, say, if I had thought like logically and thought, well, this person in a normal way wouldn't have acted like that. And then I think about my own emotions. I think about how I am gonna answer and how I think about a logical steps, you know. So is the logical thinking as such. And then on the other side, when you have the suppression of your, you know, your emotional suppressions, that is the opposite of that. So that you bottle up, you say nothing, and you get out of there and you're angry with yourself, humiliated or whatever, you couldn't, you know, but you kept that, and then or it could be in a situation that I don't want to think about that. Maybe I have a problem in my marriage, but I don't want to think about that now. It's okay. I don't want to think about that. I'm not going to think about it. And on the other side, I say, well, I have this issue. Maybe if we could talk through it, you know, it's almost like logical steps that, you know, somebody is able to cognitively think through it and find a positive way inside of a situation.
Do you
And
need help for it?
Sorry.
Do you need help and guidance, or can you do it yourself?
See, this is something that varies now from person to person, right? Some people have that in their own characteristics, and some people are able to do that because the way they were taught is a thought process. Or some people are just guided to that as well, you know, through therapies or, you know, or self help, things like that as well. And then maybe, you know, when the parent, like going back again, parenting, it's such a big job. When I start to think about, parenting, and then what we have, the responsibility is quite big, because even the way a child will react for the rest of their lives and think, we have an input on that, and that's quite interesting and an important one as well. So how we'll be able to develop thinking a rational way, a logical way, but yet to allow yourself to feel the emotions, that it's okay, because you're human. It's not that you're going to bottle up things, but you're going to allow yourself to feel, yes, it's okay to be angry, but is it okay really to burst your anger, and that it doesn't make any sense, what, on a long term, so that you are able, but things in life is that it requires a good balance of us in life, that to do certain things quickly or not, in a certain way or not, so we got to find that balance. And it is tricky, it's difficult for everybody, so I hope, did I answer that?
Yes, to me you did. I mean, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No.
No,
And cognizant emotion also is, these are the two words which I wanted to clarify. Cognizant reappraisal and reappraisal, and cognizant emotion.
you wanted to cognitive emotion?
Cognitive emotion is another word that I would like you to explain, because I have understood it as taking cognition of your emotions, and those emotions are cognitive emotions, the emotions that you cognitively create in you. Am I right?
Yeah, see, the cognitive, yeah. So when we're talking about the cognitive, it's all like your learning, your thinking, your thoughts, all that. So then when we're talking about the emotional cognitive, so it's all the emotions that you are processing, so that your cognitive is processed. So yeah, so that's the cognitive emotional thing. So that you're processing in a fast way, you're processing in a more thoughtful way. So how you deal with that?
Thank you. Very nice.
Yeah. So it is incredible, like how we all, we share different experiences, but we have that in common. We all suffer from stress from time to time. So
Yes.
it's a fact of life, and how we deal with it, it's super important. And how we view it, how we are able to relate to people. And then, like, one thing, if I was to say to you to take from this today, is like that, don't be too quick to judge something, so don't jump into conclusions, and then think about the other side, think about how somebody else would view the, how somebody would be able to view the situation, or would view what you are going through, and think about what is the impact on the other person as well. So if you think about how your response impacts somebody, so think twice before you react into a stressful situation. So don't think too quickly. Think about the 13 and the B. You could be looking at the same thing, you have different context, and and think about now how emotions come quickly, how you're able to read facial expression and everything very quickly, but logically you can't, if I ask you 2 + 2, okay, you're able to answer that question, but if I ask you something that needs a logical thinking, so you need steps. So, and same thing like that, we just slow down a little bit if you can, before we react to certain things, that we don't jump into conclusions, that we know the facts and we know what is behind, and then that we take a more kind of a global holistic view of things to come into a conclusion, so that we can deal with our daily stressors a little bit better. So yeah, so I think that's it. That's my message to you ladies. So I hope you all enjoyed this chat.
Yes.
We
Thank
For
did.
you.
sure you
Thank you so
enjoyed.
much.
Been-
Yeah.
Uh,
Really, it was
sure.
very interesting.
yeah,
Your-
so
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
it is now that you enjoyed. So hopefully, you know, maybe down the line, we might try to talk about more on the preventive side of things, you know, as
Yeah.
well. So the talk today was all about how did I, you know, I came up with this project and everything. And the project is actually going to be part of some other bigger studies that the university is looking to do as well. So they're combining all this information to bigger studies behind. So then you have those big studies that come up, you know, years later and all this. So this information is all going through a channel for that as well, you know. So
Okay.
let's see. Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck with that, Jocelyn. And I'm sure we're going to see your name in some published papers and stuff like
No.
that's it.
One thing I
Yeah.
want
But
to ask you, has has globalization and the fact that, you know, we have far more ability to interact caused the awareness and the reason to study stress and situations like this?
Yeah, that's a very good question now, and then a very intelligent one too. Because see, what happens is with the globalization these days, things are a lot faster. Things are a lot like you expect an answer a lot quicker. And in the past, people were giving, like, say, in a project, okay, you have a month to do this, and now, no, I want an answer tomorrow. I want an answer yesterday, and that has put a lot of pressure on us. So the technology that is there, it's fantastic, but well, it's fantastic depending how we use, of course, but in a sense it has brought a lot more stress to our daily lives. And even if you see studies of people who use social media, that they are a lot unhappier than people who don't use social media on a daily basis.
Exactly.
You know,
That's true.
yeah, it's incredible.
that's so true. That's so
Yeah.
true.
I was
That's
referring
true.
to intercultural relationships because now, I mean, take my mother who still lives in Sri Lanka, but I migrated to Bahrain and I have met up about 60 nationalities. So with our interrelationships, because we bring in our own cultural biases, our prejudices, you know, so there's a lot of unlearning that we've got to do than
Yeah.
if we had to stay back in our own respective countries. So has that caused additional stress in our lives in any form? Has that been studied?
I I particularly, I have not looked into that specifically, right? But I believe it has been studies on that. And yes, because there's a lot of studies coming from very good universities and all in this side of the world. And then you have, of course, the culture side of things, that it has to be studied without a bias, right? So it's interesting that some of the studies that come out, you gotta look into them with fresh eyes, because the reason why I'm saying that is that if I am producing something, I want to be um, telling you about the experience that is happening in that study and nothing else. I don't want my background to influence that. And a lot of the studies, unfortunately, are very biased. So if I have, you know, somebody from a particular side of the world, studying a culture from the other side of the world, so it has to be dealt with a lot of care, because you don't want any bias into that, and you want the facts to be stated as they are, to be a scientific study, if you know what I mean. And then I think that they stress the culture side of it, that you were saying, you know, the more, you know, Eastern and versus Western. I think that there is a huge change, especially in the last, say, 20 years. So that you have seen so much change now that, you know, your past generations, you know, didn't in the same space of time. So of course, adjusting to this, it's a tremendous thing. And even there is, when we talk about, there's one part of stress as well that when I was studying that, it relates to adjustment. So all sorts of adjustments, even adjustments in society, or adjustment into changing the way we live, or even say somebody going to college, adjusting to a new job, adjusting to, so all the adjustments cause a certain stress. So I think that what you were asking me is a form of adjustment, and if I am to say, it's a big yes for that. That has, of course, has brought a huge stress into people as well, to adjust to that and to be, you know, with the pace and everything and that. And bear in mind now that, you know, a lot of people are not on the same pace as you are, if you know what I mean. So you could be very open, you could be very open-minded for a certain, you know, things, but you, when you are talking about culture, it takes a long time to change. It takes years, decades, and, you know, so long to change. But it does, because, you know, things change. If you look, you know, how the world was like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we are changing as a society constantly. And then I hope, you know, my hope as a human is that we can become a little more open, to a more inclusive as we learn, as we go. So,
It's true. That's true.
yeah.
That's true.
So yeah, that's yeah. So I hope you enjoyed today.
Yes, yes, of
Thank
course we did.
Thank you. Yeah, it was
Very
really
interesting.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
My dear,
yes, I did say.
hello. I hope you have more time to talk about your study, because it's a very, very interesting. You know, it's impossible to close eyes in you, because you need to talk about what happened around us, what happened when I am very hungry. So how can I reaction? I don't know if you understand.
Yes.
So that study is very important, and I hope you have more time with your group, so you can talk and change the experience. I learned a lot, and when I close my eyes, I see one movie passing in front of me. Don't understand?
Yes.
When you talk and explain, you give the example. So what happened in my life 20 years ago? Why I do that? Why I give it that? I have that decision. Do you understand? So
Yes.
now I can understand better. So I can change my mind. So
Yes. And yeah.
today we are in 2020. And when I see that generation, because we have too much information, too much smartphone, everything is easy, but the people don't know how to talk, how to teach about relation. I'm sorry if I'm not explained very well. How can you talk if you're not the one without fighting?
Yes.
You know, the people have no patience.
Yeah, and it is like, it's like I said, you know, it's true, even is what you are saying, because a lot of us don't know how to deal with those emotions. We don't know how to deal with anger.
Exactly.
You know, and these are things that are happening all the time, and then and we're quick to react, and then it's like an alarm bell, like your amygdala in your brain works like an alarm bell. If that's a stressor, and the stressor could come in a form of something simple. It could be a test, but it could be somebody who were just rude to you. It could be some, you know, it could be many things. So we all experience all those different things, but it's your amygdala. It's so fast. It reacts so fast that before you think, you go. So it's when, you know, if you think about a gazelle that is there and then it freezes when the light is shining on it, that's the freeze, you know, from the fight, flight, or freeze. That is the response, because it's almost like if your body shows, like if you respond on the fight or flight or freeze in a freeze state, because all of us have one particular way to respond, right? If somebody freezes it, it's almost like you shut down, your body shuts down to a big hit. And that comes like from the when you were back, like when our ancestors were back, like it is thousands of years ago, when they were fighting, they had no way to run away from it. Their body almost shuts itself, that you don't feel pain enough, that you freeze, and that's how we respond. And then other people are just gonna fight, you know, they're gonna take that. That's like, you know, a big fight for, you know, with that a threat. And other people are just gonna run. So it's how we react, and that is in us. And then it's learning what is our reaction to things. And I've been to, like, you know, a freeze situation that somebody has, you know, crashed into me, for example, and I was stuck in the car. I couldn't, like, my body shut down in a way that I just froze. It was almost like I saw the crash was coming, was imminent. So my whole body just closed, and I just woke up later because my body prepared for me for that. Like it was too imminent, it was too fast. I saw it coming and I couldn't avoid that. So and that how I reacted. But well, in that case, the fact was that I had no time. And then that my body protected myself, and I fainted. Basically, I don't remember anything. Then that's how your body goes. So, and the next thing, okay, you wake up somewhere else. It's like, what happened? You know, so, but I didn't bang my head, you know, but my body reacted like that, you know. So it's interesting. So all of us, we have different reactions, and, you know, and then, but we have to learn how to deal with anger, and understanding how what that brings into our system, and how severe is chronic stress or the repeated stress into your body. So
yes, I understand. And I have one word for you. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, for your study. Thank you. And I hope you have another meeting like that with your other people.
Yeah, you know, so it would be nice if you're here for other meetings, Nisi. Shireen is the person who deals with all the she's the coordinator of this group. So to have you again.
Please join us.
Thank you so much, Miss Shireen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'd love to have you on board.
Thank you.
This was really so
again.
useful.
Yes,
you have given us so much to think about. Thank you.
Like personally, it was so good to handle everyday life.
Yeah,
very true.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you all got something out of this today. So
absolutely. Yeah.
And you gave the conclusion was very nice. Just about half an hour, 10-15 minutes ago, you kept it all. That was a very good conclusion. When I want to re-listen to it, I want to make a note of it. That was well done. That summary was excellent. Thank you.
Much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think see all of you in December.
Yes, on the 12th of December.
12th of December, which is going to be our carol singing time. We are doing something different next month. Keeping in with
family
the season,
and friends
right?
as well, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Children are involved. They can all come in and join the songs.
Yeah, so it's just going to be singing time.
Yeah, that would be nice. Really. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Ivanis, we welcome you to come on 12th December as well.
Yes, please come and join us.
It's my pleasure.
children,
Thank you.
everybody else who likes to join.
Yeah.
I held back the announcement because the Prime Minister passed on. So
But
once in
that's
maybe the next
I
week
mean,
or
their
so.
mourning is over, right?
Yeah.
Over.
Mm,
Yes, yes.
absolutely. So bye and see you all in December.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
all of us. Bye.
Bye, Sri.
Bye bye. Bye.
Thank you, Rekha. Bye.
Welcome.
Bye,
Bye.
Amina.
Bye, Nina.
Bye,
Bye.
Farida.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Joceley. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.